Goosebumps, the scariest series in children's literature. I've taken it upon myself to summarize every Goosebumps story ever told, in the hopes that we all come out knowing a bit more about the things that go bump in the night. Not just the stories, but their adaptations too. So if you're ready, viewer beware, you're in for a scare, as we dive into book number 3, Monster Blood. So our first cover here is the original 1992 by Tim Jacobus, with the titular Monster Blood itself seeping down this stairwell. And what could have happened to the owner of those glasses? Our tagline this time is, "It's a Monster Blood drive." Not my favorite. The bag says blood, blood everywhere. That's pretty intimidating at least. The cover is iconic, but I would have loved to see a final version of this cover sketch that Jacobus did. Now, my next cover here is a bit more unique. I noticed on the Goosebumps wiki there was a mention that a few Goosebumps books were sold at KFCs in Canada all the way back in '96. I thought that was hilarious, so I found one. It's really not much different, but there's a huge logo for YTV posted in this corner. From what I've learned, YTV was basically the Canadian equivalent to Nickelodeon, and Goosebumps aired there. Considering that pretty much the entire show was a Canadian production, it only makes sense that it was big up there too. For me, it was all about those Halloween marathons on Cartoon Network in the late 2000s. Now those were the good old days. Anyway, here's the next cover, the 2003 reprint. Our letters are now red at the top, and the slime is green, just like the Monster Blood. My last standalone book here is the 2008 reprint. Brandon Dorman has his own take, a big ooze monster coming out of a trash can that loves consuming sports equipment, I guess. I would love to say that this was the first time Monster Blood was depicted as this Dungeons & Dragons-esque ooze, but Monster Blood for Breakfast has this beat by about 2 months. This depiction is similar to a scene that will play out in the book, so keep an ear out for it in the summary. Now, I would be showing you the graphic novel here, but it is not released yet. When it comes out later this year, odds are I'll make a video discussing it as sort of an update. So our first collection here is fittingly named the Monster Blood Collection. This actually released about a month before the 2003 reprint and contains the first 3 Monster Blood books. It has the same summary as Monster Blood, but we have a tagline of, "It's green, it's slimy, and it's growing!" Finally, we have our old friend, the hair-raising collection. Still the same as it'll ever be, but this is the last time we'll see it.
I won't forget you, buddy.
But with those covers out of the way, it's time for the, oh no, the Monster Blood, it's here! No! So, Monster Blood is the first book in this series that will receive many sequels. Our main character, Evan Ross, will be the protagonist for all of the first 4, the most appearances of a recurring protagonist in the original series. Also, these 4 will be the only series of sequels to be written entirely in the third person. So the story immediately starts with Evan being a whiny baby. He's crying to his mom about not wanting to stay at his great Aunt Catherine's house. He hasn't seen her since he was 2, and he's 12 now. Mom says that it's a family emergency, and they've discussed it plenty of times, but Evan just keeps being rude. Trigger, the family's Cocker Spaniel, starts barking from the car, so Evan has to let him out. He's 12 years old too, but he runs around excited like a young puppy. Mom's been knocking on the front door for so long that Evan has to remind her that Catherine is deaf. All that whining must have made Mom unable to think straight. We get a flashback to the conversation that led to this plot. Dad's work transferred him to Atlanta, so him and Mom have to go searching for a new home ASAP. With everyone else they know being on vacation thanks to it being August, they have no choice but to leave Evan with great Aunt Catherine. Apparently, she's been deaf for 20 years but never bothered to learn how to sign or read lips. Evan eavesdrops the whole conversation from outside of the house, and he's sad that they don't ever include him. Back in the present, though, Evan asks Mom if Catherine is mean. Mom wonders why he asks, but she doesn't notice the door swing open, and Catherine's holding a bloody knife.
"I was slicing beef,"
she said in a surprisingly deep voice. Catherine's nothing like Evan thought. She's not a disgusting old hag, quite the opposite. Despite being 80 years old, she's tall with broad shoulders, steely blue eyes, and surprisingly black hair tied into a ponytail. The Rhea Ripley's of great aunts, I suppose. She talks like one of those Russian parents from a movie.
"I used to call his father Chicken, because he was no bigger than a chicken."
Catherine's pretty funny, and we get some classic back and forth as she can't understand a word that Evan and Mom are saying. but goes on tangents about if Evan likes girls, his preferences on beef, whatnot. Catherine finally decides to bake Evan a pie, so Evan takes the time to complain about her while her back is turned. She's so weird! Mom has faith that he'll understand her sense of humor, and Evan finally decides to be brave and start unpacking. His new room is a study that was given a little bit of space for a cot. The smell of mothballs is palpable, an elderly house staple, at least in America. Did you know they could cause cancer, among other horrible effects? Uh-oh. Well, Mom has to leave, but she gives Evan one last thing. A $10 bill. Sweet! Oh, but what is there to do around here? No Nintendo, no computer, no TV. Let me translate that for the kids of today. No Fortnite, no TikTok, no Netflix? Yeah, it's a little unfair for me to judge this kid when I'm making videos so that people don't need to read a book. The irony is not lost on me. Despite what I just said, Evan's first idea actually is to go looking for books, but it's all science and history textbooks, non-fiction. Gross! He then opens up the closet and something jumps out at him. Everything goes black. He can't see! Evan then hears Catherine laughing in the doorway. It wasn't the never-ending void, but actually a cat named Sarah Beth. Catherine starts joking around that the cat has a weird sense of humor, and that she's pure evil. She keeps repeating that over and over, and Trigger eventually starts barking, scaring Sarah Beth away. Catherine says that Sarah Beth can't be getting riled up around here, so she instructs Evan to bring Trigger. She'll take care of him. What could that mean? A relief washes over Evan as all she wanted was for Trigger to be tied to a leash outside. Trigger's not an outside dog, so this isn't the best outcome, but it's not like he can argue with her. Pretty smart, Evan thinks. Never learning sign language means you get to do whatever you want. Catherine takes Evan inside to eat some milk and cookies, and he absolutely devours them before deciding to take Trigger on a walk. Nothing really stands out on his walk, but after seeing a squirrel, Trigger sprints off so fast that Evan lets go of his leash. Trigger's a bit too old to outrun Evan forever, but by the time he bends down to pick him up, we get our first shoulder grab of the book as a voice asks, "Hey, who are you?" "It's a girl." Evan asks her why she grabbed his shoulder, and her response is as simple as a Goosebumps book needs: to scare him. Evan thinks she's pretty and describes her entire attire down to the shoes. She's not shy either, asking him plenty of questions. Apparently the house Catherine lives in is called the Winterhalter House. I don't think that ever comes up again, but I thought I'd mention it. She says that she likes stupid dogs, and Evan's dog looks stupid. So does he have a stupid name too? Yes. Yes, he does. Despite the fact that this is pretty rude, this girl's neurodivergent charm just makes Evan say thanks. She says her name is stupid too. It's Andrea. She thinks it's a stuck-up sounding name, so she has everyone call her Andy. Andy guesses that Evan has a stupid name too, so he introduces himself.
"My name's Evan. Evan's stupid."
This makes Andy laugh, and Evan's glad there's finally a girl who gets his sense of humor. Match made in heaven, I guess. Andy mentions that the neighborhood is boring and invites Evan to go out into town. What could go wrong? So Andy needs to head to the toy store to get a gift for her cousin. The town's got pretty standard stuff, but there are 2 toy stores. Andy prefers the more antique one, so they head there. It even has a perfectly antique name too, Wagner's Novelties and Sundries. The place is a bit of a dusty mess, and the owner is busy reading the newspaper. Evan asks if they have Nintendo games, and the owner angrily grunts that they don't carry them. Even if this guy did have Nintendo games, what could he even buy with his measly $10? Games back then cost even more than they do now. Imagine paying nearly $100 for a game on an old console nowadays. Oh right. Andy finds a metal lunchbox with a cowboy on it named Hopalong Cassidy. This is actually a real character from early 1900s stories and other media that I've never heard of before. It seems that Hopalong Cassidy peaked in the 50s, so it makes sense that the merchandise would end up in this shop. Andy says that it's a stupid name, and her cousin loves stupid names too. Sorry that you called her stray, Hopalong Cassidy. Hey, take a drink every time you hear the word stupid in this book. You might be dead by the end of these 2 chapters. Anyway, Evan wanders further into the store until he finds a dim area with some junk even older than what's up front. He's about to leave when he spots a blue can. He grabs it, and it's pretty heavy. He then reads the label. Monster blood. Surprising miracle substance. When he turns around, the owner is in the doorway yelling, "What are you doing back here?" The owner says that it's not for sale, and he insists it's probably too old to work anymore. The kids are stubborn though, so he finally gives it up for $2, but no returns if it sucks ass. The kids leave the store, and Andy tries to buy it off of Evan for $5. Great deal, but he's not taking it. Evan decides they can go back to Catherine's house together, and he'll let Andy mess with it for a bit. They get to the house and Catherine's talking to someone? Oh, just the cat Sarabeth, it seems. Evan introduces Andy to her, and then lets her check out the monster blood. As the kids start to go upstairs, it seems like Catherine says the words, "Be careful." But Evan isn't sure. Andy notices a bunch of books about magic in his room. Maybe Catherine's casting spells around here. After some struggling, they open the can of monster blood and take a look inside. So monster blood ends up being some glow-in-the-dark green slime. It ends up being really bouncy and can stretch really far too. For being ancient, this stuff really holds up. It stains the floors, so they take it outside, as if it wasn't covered in dirt enough by now. They split the monster blood in two and play catch with it. Evan accidentally overthrows it, sending it straight towards Trigger. Before they can grab it, Trigger takes a bite and swallows the whole ball. What if it's poisonous? We're left to wonder about what happened as Evan spends the next few days trying to be friendly with Catherine, but she keeps telling him to go play with his friends instead. Evan surmises from this that Catherine is really mean. She won't even let him put sugar in his cereal. Despite the sunny weather outside, Catherine says that it'll rain today. That's when Evan notices a pendant around her neck that looks like a bone. Weird. She tells him to go hang out with his girlfriend, and Evan runs upstairs concluding that Catherine really does hate him. Evan thinks back to his phone call with his parents from the night prior. House hunting isn't going too well, so they'll need a few more days before coming back to pick him up. How sad. Next morning, Evan leaves to go hang out with Andy. He wants Trigger to come along, but he's been sleeping all day. Only a bit into his walk, he runs into two boys. Twins, beefy, blonde, red-faced, a few years older than him. They're the typical bully stereotype, wearing heavy metal band shirts, baggy shorts, and untied shoes. Now that's tough. The twins pick on Evan for being the new kid around here, and they start closing in. Evan thinks he's about to get mugged, but Andy flies in on her bike just in time. The twins know her well and decide to stop messing with Evan, in exchange for Andy's bike. A scuffle begins, and Andy ends up biting the curb with her bike laying on top of her. The punks take that opportunity to steal her bike and ride away. When Andy recovers, she mentions that they're the Bamer twins, Rick and Tony. They live with their grandma who's never home and think they run the neighborhood. Luckily, Andy got away with just a cut on her knee, but she has to go home and get it patched up. With today's plans ruined, Evan goes back to the house daydreaming about beating the twins up just to impress Andy. He goes to his room wondering what to do and grabs the can of monster blood. The can's almost full, reminding him about the piece that Trigger ate. That poor dog! He came back here and forgot all about him. He sprints into the yard to notice Trigger looks horrible. The poor dog is foaming at the mouth and gasping for air. He's choking! His collar's too tight. Evan manages to get it off with enough effort, but how could the collar have shrunk? No, that's not it. Trigger is bigger. But Trigger's 12 years old. How could he be growing now? Well, the next morning, Evan decides to head to Andy's house again, finding her busy with something. Apparently, those horrendous twins managed to tie a cat to a tree trunk. They manage to untie it together and wonder how they could possibly get back at those twins. They go back to Catherine's together and find her doing a jigsaw puzzle. Catherine's joking around, and Evan tells Andy the spiel about how she hates everyone. Andy thinks she's sweet, though. Evan even calls her a crazy old coot with a smile on his face. Pure evil right there. Catherine gives him the Kubrick stare after that, but Evan's laughing. She's deaf! So in Evan's room, they don't know what to do. The monster blood, of course. But wait! It's starting to overflow the can! Okay, so it's definitely growing. Cool. It's also not cold anymore. It's pretty warm. And it's sticky. Wow! Who'd have thought fresh slime might get sticky when you bounce it in dirt? Sarabeth stands in the doorway and seems to stare at the monster blood, but she walks away when they tell that poor cat that the goop is too sticky to play with. It seems like they need something else to put the... You know what? I'm just going to start calling the monster blood MB from now on. I'm going to assume right now that I'll have to say it a lot. So they need to find something else to put the MB in, and conveniently, there's an empty coffee can on the shelf. They tease each other with it and throw it all around the place until dinner time. After dinner, they hear Trigger barking outside and whoa! He's doubled in size! Trigger starts running away into the night, about the size of a pony now, and he won't listen to Evan at all. He's chasing after those twins, and Evan keeps trying to keep up after him. Trigger lets out this monstrous howl and starts transforming. He grows fangs, sharp claws, and then Evan wakes up. The bed feels uncomfortable, though. He looks down and sees his enormous feet. He's a giant! All Evan can do is scream! And then he wakes up. Again. Drenched in a cold sweat, he looks around and sees everything's fine. Well, Trigger's still double his size, but not a monster. Evan thinks he's just gotta sleep this weird feeling off, but what? That coffee can full of MB. It's overflowing. Talk about a short chapter. Barely even 2 pages. New record. We cut ahead as Evan and Andy take Trigger to Dr. Forrest, a veterinarian. They're relieved when he says that it's just a growth spurt, but it is highly unusual. Maybe one of the tests he did will come back with something. I'm not even gonna lie, I'm going back through this script right now. I don't even think this vet comes up again. Well, in any case, good luck paying for that vet work with your $8 remaining, dude. Andy has to go to her piano lesson, so Evan heads out to town knowing just what he needs, an ice cream pop. He ties Trigger to a fire hydrant and grabs his ice cream, but by the time he's back outside, those twins are out untying Trigger. Tony says that it's their dog now, and Rick punches the ice cream out of Evan's hand. Trigger starts growling and pounces right on top of Rick, causing Tony to sprint away. Rick's got to catch up to him, but Trigger chases after them. As Evan's made to go after Trigger, he realizes, oh no, is my dream coming true? This book has had a bit of an annoying approach to cliffhangers in the last few chapters. Just like the overflowing monster blood, we don't see what happens in the chase, but cut a little bit forward to dinner. Evan's asking Andy if he can come over. He did manage to get Trigger back to the house, but that's not his concern right now. He shows up to Andy's house with an aluminum bucket from Catherine's garage nearly filled to the brim with NB. He doesn't know what to do with it. It's growing faster than Trigger is. Then they both finally realize the obvious truth. Trigger's growing because of that piece of MB he ate. They can't tell Catherine because she's deaf and totally hates Evan. The vet and the police can't help either because who would believe a story like this? They can't even throw it away because Evan pretty intelligently knows that he needs to save some evidence if he needs the doctor to find a cure. So Andy is all he has left, so she gets pushed into taking a little bit of it, about a coffee cup's full. When they reach the cup into the bucket to scoop some out, it gets pulled in. It takes a lot of effort to get it back out, but her cup is recovered and the bucket is a little bit lighter. Before Evan goes home for dinner, Andy warns him that those twins might want revenge for earlier, and sure enough, look who's right outside. The twins knock the bucket out of Evan's hand, causing the MB to spill out onto the ground. Then they start beating the hell out of him until he almost passes out. Andy finds him outside and says that the twins just managed to run away. She promises they'll get back at them soon, but first they gotta clean up the MB. Her dad is obsessed with lawn care, so this better not mess up the grass. It's really heavy, and it won't come apart, so they have to drop this entire ball of it back into the bucket. Evan makes it back to Catherine's without getting jumped this time and notices the bucket's almost full again. He's going to have to try and find a bigger container in the basement tonight, but first he'll clean himself up. At dinner, Catherine asks if he's been in a fight, joking about how his dad used to always get in scraps as a kid too. This only solidifies his idea that she doesn't care about him. And when he thinks it might be a good idea to let her know about the MB, he quickly shuts it down. Andy mentioned taking it back to the store earlier, and now Evan agrees that that's the best idea. Hello? Chapter 7 calling. Just wanted to remind you the owner told you not to bring it back. With that complete lack of memory, Evan heads to the garage to find a new container. He scans the garage with his flashlight, and when he finds the monster blood, it's already about to overflow the bucket. It's growing faster. He's got to find somewhere to keep it till tomorrow. He sneaks back through the house and finds the basement. The light switch flicks on a dim light at the bottom of the room, but when a spider crawls onto Evan's face, he drops the bucket. Something's over in the dark corner of the room, but Evan trips and falls onto a human body. Just kidding. It's a dressmaker's mannequin. It looks like that hidden object in the corner was actually a cracked old bathtub. Weird, but also convenient. Evan heaves the MB into the tub and notices it's already half full. This stuff is growing exponentially. Still leaning over the tub from the pain of getting his ass kicked, he hears the cat screech from behind. Sarabeth leaps onto Evan's back and he falls into the tub. Sarabeth quickly leaps off as the MB starts pulling Evan down. He struggles to move, managing to get himself into a sitting position, but the MB keeps sucking him. He's screwed. The power of the indomitable human spirit is within him. Evan manages to use the sides of the tub to hoist himself over. He finds Sarabeth standing in front of him, and the cat has an expression of supreme satisfaction on her face. The next morning, Evan wakes up from a terrible sleep and decides to finally tell Catherine about the MB. If I didn't mention it before, because it doesn't really happen often, he uses a notepad to communicate with her. I have a problem. I need your help. The bathtub downstairs is overflowing with green monster blood, and I can't stop it. Catherine studies the message and then throws her head and laughs. Evan starts to lose it as Catherine laughs at what a hilarious imagination he has. But then we start to get serious. Catherine grabs his ear and tells him,
I warned you. I warned you to be careful.
Yet again, it seems that Andy is Evan's only hope. He calls her and says, yeah, we gotta take it back to the shop. All the ideas they have basically boil down to transporting the MB in a plastic lawn bag, which they both have. Evan's concerned that the bag might split, but I'm more impressed by his strength. He moved it all the way from the bathtub to the bag, and dragged it upstairs and outside. They managed to drag the bags along the next 2 blocks to the toy store, but no, it can't be! Out of business! Evan's starting to lose his temper. He keeps banging his hands on the doors when a random woman mentions the store closed a few days ago, but he's still going. Andy finally manages to calm him down, but with no ideas and the bag starting to pulsate, they'll have to drag them all the way back to Catherine's and think of what to do. They spot a metal trash can with a lid that latches on and decide to shove it all in there. I would think a bathtub could hold more goop than a trash can, but who knows. Catherine comes outside with a telegram to tell Evan that his mom is coming to pick him up later, and he's ecstatic. He's popping off harder than a Smash player. He gets to leave! He tries to give Andy a high five, but she doesn't accept it. What about this MB you just left in this trash can? Shouldn't you tell Catherine or at least somebody about it? But Evan doesn't even care and goes to tell Trigger the good news. Oh my god! Trigger really is the size of a pony now. He excitedly starts jumping on Evan, then runs towards the street. In the chaos of trying to catch Trigger, Evan trips on Andy's bike and bumps into the trash can, causing the monster blood to spill out. Evan's still dazed on the ground as the monster blood seems to come to life and rise out of the trash can itself. Eh? Remember that cover I was talking about? But too late to talk about that, it's starting to lunge towards Evan. He's gotta move! It really is alive. As the MB bounces around towards them, the kids run around the house from the backyard to the front, and back to the front of the house again. They stop for a moment as the twins appear at the sidewalk, ready to give Evan another beating. The twins freeze as the MB appears from the side of the house, bouncing towards them. Unable to warn them in time, the twins are swallowed and frantically struggle until they go limp. The kids try to think of what to do until Catherine opens the door. She sees the MB and runs inside, leaving the door open. The MB hesitates to move at first, but eventually bounces up the stairs and into the house, and Catherine starts screaming. Evan and Andy run inside to see Catherine backed up to the fireplace. She yells at them to run away, staring deeply into the monster blood. Evan doesn't know what to do until Catherine says,
I made this thing, and now I must die for it.
What?
Images flood into Evan's mind.
The bone pendant around her neck. The books on magic. The black cat. The
Shawl she wears at night time? She has to see the monster blood. Was she casting a spell on it to kill Evan? He accuses Catherine, but she starts crying. It's not her fault. She made her do it. And Catherine points directly at Andy. No, not Andy. The cat. Sarabeth. Evan thinks Catherine's truly gone mad until the shadows start swirling. The oldest trick in the book. The black cat was a witch this whole time. Catherine addresses Sarabeth, saying that she's no longer bound to serve her after being in prison for 20 years. She'll use the monster blood to escape. Sarabeth denies her, though. Everyone will die. In this really tense, near-death moment, it's time for Catherine to drop some backstory. 20 years ago, Catherine was lonely, and Sarabeth convinced her that she was a friend, but put her under a spell to keep her prisoner. She also cast another spell to deafen Catherine, and also forced her not to learn how to communicate, so Catherine is Sarabeth's slave. I don't know why or what for, but it's gotta stay that way. Visitors can't be allowed so that the secret can stay safe, but since Evan needed to stay here, she forced Catherine to cast a spell on the monster blood so that it would eventually grow to kill him. But now, Catherine will sacrifice herself into the monster blood, her logic being that without her as a slave, Sarabeth won't need to kill the kids anymore. But they know too much! They still have to die! What do? Sarabeth's blocking the doorway, and she commands the monster blood to kill the kids. Just as they decide to rush the doorway together, it's too late. Or is it? As they wait for death, they hear a roar, not from the monster blood, but Trigger? He bounds into the room, excited to see Evan, inadvertently running right into Sarabeth, which knocks her right into the monster blood. She's completely absorbed before she can say a thing, and both Trigger and the monster blood start shrinking. The twins, and a robin that was grabbed in the backyard earlier, are spit out into the floor, still alive. The MB's back to its original size, and Sarabeth is gone. The twins run away, and Catherine is elated that her hearing is back, and Sarabeth and her nasty spells are gone, but then a shadowy figure comes into the house? Mom's here! What amazing timing! She's confused about what the hell happened, so Catherine takes her to the kitchen to tell her the whole story. Andy and Evan have an awkward conversation on the couch. I guess Evan will be in Atlanta now, forever, so they both, admit that, they'd like to, write letters and call each other. Andy asks if she can have some of the monster blood as a memento. That's fine with Evan, so they look over to the spot it was left and wait, it's gone! Okay, so let me just mention this first. Evan is the most annoying protagonist we have had so far. I was poking fun at Casey from Stay Out of the Basement, but this kid is on a whole new level. I haven't said it before in these videos, but I am going into these books mostly blind. I haven't read all of these books before, and the ones I have, it's been a while. I also write my scripts as I read these books, so for now, I'm crowning Evan as our most annoying Goosebumps child. We've got 3 more books with him as the protagonist, so let's hope he matures a little bit. If you know of any more annoying-ass kids to look forward to, please comment them below. But about the actual story, it has a few elements similar to Welcome to Dead House. Having to move into a new house is a tried and true fear for kids. And just as Evan finds a girlfriend, he's got to move away again. The Monster Blood itself is iconic and a clear homage to the Blob. It won't even be the only book inspired by that movie, but it'll be a while till we get to that one. I actually want to cut in here quick. When I was working on editing this, I realized that Flubber could have very easily been an inspiration for the Monster Blood. The movie with Robin Williams that most of you might know came out way after this book, but the original movie, The Absent-Minded Professor, released in 1961. It's even the background footage for the summary. One of the other main properties of Monster Blood, at least before it's enchanted, is the ability to bounce around insanely well. This is the defining property of Flubber, literally flying rubber. It's almost a bit disappointing that the Monster Blood doesn't become threatening until the last 23 pages. Even worse, Sarah Beth only transforms in the last 11. Her motivation at the end was pretty unclear, and she just disappears. I don't even know if she'll come back again. And can we talk about those twins? Oh man, bullies like that just make my blood boil. Not to say that they should have died in the Monster Blood, but I doubt that experience will change them that much. Enough with the negativity though, this isn't a review channel. Let's move on to the episode. Before that though, all this talking is getting me thirsty. Let's have a drink. Have you noticed that most of the Goosebumps classic reprints I've shown so far have a now with bonus features thing at the bottom right? I haven't really mentioned them before, but this one I thought was special. It actually has a recipe for Monster Blood Punch. It's not even hard to make either, you just need some lime jello and some white grape juice. All sorts of random things can be found in these bonus features. My favorite is probably these power scaling stats that they put at the bottom. Not all of them have it, but it's pretty funny. Anyway, back to the actual video. This is our first episode to not have 2 parts, so will that lack of extra runtime mean a lot needs to be changed? Let's find out. So Evan takes over as a sort of narrator at the beginning and explains that he's being dumped to Catherine's place. Dad's actually here with him this time instead of being in Atlanta already. We get some new insults as Evan says Catherine's sugar cookies taste like kitty litter. In the book, if you remember, he hasn't been here since he was 2 years old, so I guess he's there more often in this universe. Hold on, is that Petey from Welcome to Dead House? I hope this poor border collie is getting paid overtime to replace dogs that aren't the same breed. So Catherine looks a lot more like an actual old woman in this version, and she isn't deaf but just hard of hearing. They really do try to make her seem creepy right away. Old people, yuck! She's actually allergic to Trigger in this episode, so this is how he gets leashed into the yard. So Catherine directs Evan to his room and tells him not to enter the room across the hall. Well, being the little jerk Evan is, of course he's going to disobey that. He looks around in this ugly old room until Catherine grabs his shoulder. She tells him that the room is forbidden, and she also seems to try and lock this mirror and hold it shut. So Andy seems to just pop up on her bike the next day and Trigger barks at her. He starts chewing on this comic book or magazine, which she doesn't care that he's eating. Well, at least it gives precedent to him being the type of dog that eats anything. Catherine is out getting groceries, so they decide to hang out. Apparently Catherine's already infamous in town for being the creepy old lady who plays music at night. Pretty different. It seems that she can leave the house just fine and everyone thinks she's crazy. You know, I never really thought about how Catherine would have gotten her groceries in the book. Maybe they got a spell for it. Well, Evan mentions that forbidden room and Andy teases him until they go investigate it together. Those books on witchcraft are in this room now, and a bunch of other witchy ingredients are hidden behind this unlocked mirror cabinet, namely the Monster Blood, as we've completely removed the toy store from the episode. It seems that when they open the jar, Sarah Beth poofs into existence and runs away. The MB's already warm, but it's still really bouncy. They decide to split it 50-50 right away, and Andy distracts Catherine as she comes home so Evan can hide it. They decide to play with it right behind Catherine's car and give it a bounce, where...
Oh! It went into orbit!
Meanwhile, a fly lands in Andy's container, and we get this scene of it getting devoured. It somehow lands right on the ground without bouncing anymore, and Trigger quickly eats it. We get the moment from Chapter 10 where it looks like Trigger's dying, but I guess he was just faking it. There's no collar on him to choke anyway. Catherine shows up and tells him to eat a sugar cookie, and oh my god, they really might be made of kitty litter. So after that awkward moment, Evan heads off to bed, and oh my goodness, the MB's already overflowing. Andy shows up with her batch almost filling up a cooler. Catherine's having an epic jam session in the living room, and the kids sneak around to try and fill anything they can find with the excess MB. It doesn't seem to be one whole mass like the book yet, or they just couldn't make an effect like that work. Catherine sneezes, messing up the record right as the kids are about to come downstairs. She asks Evan if Trigger is inside because something is making her sneeze, and oh no, she's out of allergy pills. I guess she must be allergic to cats, too. So with Catherine gone, they've got a few minutes to pour the MB into the actual bathtub this time, and Andy's batch is already overflowing. How did Catherine not see that when she left? Evan finally remembers that Trigger ate this stuff, but where is he? He's left enormous footprints, but apparently containing the MB is more important than finding a giant dog roaming the city. Sarah Beth is watching from a shelf as Evan decides to sit on the edge of the bathtub. Andy even warns him, but he gets pulled right in. With help, he gets out, and they really need to stop it from taking over the whole house. Evan just totally messes up this table trick right here and tries to put the cloth under the door. Well, it's too late. Catherine's back and the MB keeps growing. She scolds them and quickly mentions Sarah Beth, and Sarah Beth transforms in front of them. In the book, Sarah Beth had red hair, but now it's dark. She has these weird cat mannerisms too, and decides to let Catherine dump the backstory. So in this version about 30 years ago, they were roommates. Catherine found Sarah Beth at night practicing witchcraft. She tried to throw her out, but she was too strong. Somehow Sarah Beth accidentally backed up into this tiny little puddle of monster blood though. Her own creation this time. She disappeared into this tiny little bit of goop and sealed her in that jar, hoping no one would open it again. She commands the monster blood to advance, but is interrupted when Trigger, who is like 10 times as big as he was in the book, barks at her from outside the window. Sarah Beth's weird cat mannerisms make her start clawing at him and hissing to the point where she doesn't even notice the MB behind her, and she disappears. The horror is over! Evan's on a plane talking to some kid the whole story, and Trigger's in the cargo hold. But what's this? A suitcase filling up with monster blood? Well, that was certainly something, huh? It goes to show you the liberties they have to take with only about 20 minutes of runtime. No toy store, none of those horrible twins. A lot of changes, too. They made the monster blood a straight magical creation instead of a toy. I like that Sarah Beth got a bit more time in this one, but it was at the expense of Catherine's entire character. Andy and Catherine's funny personalities were toned down a bit, and Evan was at least slightly less annoying. What about Andy and Evan's future together? What about that scene on the plane? Looks like we'll have to find that out when we get to Monster Blood 2. Except that'll be a little bit, because that isn't the next video or even the next one after that, but okay. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that story. Did you learn anything new? I plan on releasing these every 2 weeks, so if you're as excited for the next one as I am, please subscribe to keep up to date. Have a beautiful day, everyone, and prepare yourself for the next book. Say cheese and die.